Okay, looks like we are live. So it's a little bit of a different stream this morning. We have a client that is on a, I think, 16 or 18 hour time difference. It's a big one, other side of the world type thing. And so trying to get the basics and the basic workflows in P21 figured out. So what I said was, hey, well, let's put it on YouTube. So we will record a couple of these and get them over to you guys, and then you could just consume them at will. So shout out for you guys in Australia. This one's for y'all, and we'll get this going. So this live stream, we're going to do quote to cash, and we'll stop it, restart it, do purchase to pay, and then we also may try to do some wireless warehouse stuff if we have time. But those are the main two that we want to work on. So this one will focus on quote to cash. So quoting and orders all start from the same place, the order screen. There's also some tax considerations and why you may or may not use the front counter order entry. It's really just about calculating where tax comes from mostly. But for these purposes, let's just stay with the order entry window. Get that opened up. Okay, so as you can see here, my order is defaulting to a quote, and that is based on a user setting. So if you go to user maintenance, there is a checkbox in there that determines whether or not your user profile is going to default to quote or order. So you can kind of change that on a user by user basis. And I think there's a business case to be made for either of those things. Okay, let's see here. All right, so to get everything started, you're going to put either a customer, a ship to, or a contact. You can fill out any one of those three fields. So there's customer, there's ship to, there's contact, and it's going to try to figure out what you want to do. So I typically start with ship to ID because it really depends on whether or not contacts are required in your system. All right, so we got our sample customer, and see, because a ship to can only be associated with a single customer, it already knows to pre-fill the customer. So a lot of our customers will move the ship to ID field up above customer ID field, and again, it just saves one more field of stuff that you have to enter in. If the customer only has one ship to, it doesn't really matter, but if they have multiples, it starts to matter. Okay. We can put in a PO number. Again, it's a customer level setting that determines whether or not PO numbers are required. There's also some system settings that you can set that determine whether or not PO numbers can be reused and what happens if you get a duplicate PO number. Okay, so in this instance, we are going to start with a quote. Now, once you start putting items in, this box is locked. So as long as you don't have items in the screen, you're fine. But like I said, once you start to put items in, you cannot change it from quote to order unless you go through the conversion process. All right, so put 5 on our quote, and we'll quote them at, I don't know, $3 a piece. And then it's just rinse and repeat. You just keep adding items. So we can use type ahead search to try to find another one. There's one there. Whatever you want to do there. Okay. One second. All right, so that's done. Now, if you want to print the quote, you would just go to the front counter tab. Sometimes it's also called the print options tab. Just depends on if you've renamed it or not. But front counter tab is what it will be by default. and you just select a print quotation, and then you save it. And we get a quotation. There it is. So simple stuff, right? 167 is our order number. Okay. So now we want to convert that to an order. There's two ways we can do that, but they both start with retrieving the quote. Now, if this is one and done, you're converting this order, or you're converting this quote to an order, and you're never going to reuse it again, then the simplest thing to do is right click and click convert to order. And what's going to happen is the order number will stay the same as the quote number, but you can never, that's it. You can't do anything with the quote after that because you have turned it into an order. The other thing you can do is use the QTO wizard, which is the quote to order wizard, and that creates an order from the quote, leaving the original quote intact so that it can be used again to create another order or whatever you want to do. So for demonstration purposes, we're just going to convert to order. And it warns you, hey, if you do this, you're not going to be able to use this quote in the future. Are you sure you want to do that? Yes, we are. Okay, now you can see the quote checkbox is gone and it's turned into an order. All right. So the next step that happens from here is that if the items are in stock, which you can tell that by looking at the disposition. So we have plenty available and the disposition is blank. So that means these products are allocated and can ship. And you can double check that by looking at extended info. There's 5 ordered, there's 5 allocated. This thing's ready to go to a pick ticket. Now, in most cases, you're going to have a background task running that creates pick tickets automatically on a schedule, like usually every 5 to 10 minutes. That way you don't have to worry about creating a pick ticket and something getting missed or whatever. But we don't have a scan set up on this right now to do that. So what we'll do is we'll just forcibly print the pick ticket. And that is also done on the front counter tab. All of your print, email, fax stuff is always going to be done from the front counter tab. So you're going to click print, pick ticket, and save it. All right, and now we have a pick ticket and it's ready to go. I keep hitting the wire. Let's try that. Okay, so the next step in this is that we now want to ship this order, right? And eventually invoice it. So we're going to go to the shipping window to do that, which I already have bookmarked. Okay, and our pick ticket number ends in 17. Now you can either type that in if you have it in front of you, or you can go search for it. Oops. Oh, I'm still in order entry. Yikes. Same thing. There's our pick ticket number 17. Okay, and here we go. So at this point, you can do things like set who your carrier is. You can put in tracking numbers, all of that kind of good stuff. But the main thing is you're going to adjust these quantities if they need to be adjusted. If you are tracking lots and or bins, you'll have the requisite tabs lit up here. So in this system, we're using lot bin integration. So we have a single tab lot bin that's lit up. And it's telling us which lots and bins are allocated. That can be changed from here. So if we had a different lot in a different bin, we could do that. Now, I don't know if we do, but let's check and see. Sure. Okay, there we go. We have lot 10878, and we could put in bin A1. So we could select that one instead, change that to 3. and change this one to 0. And we could decide that, hey, we're going to ship our 3 units out of this lot instead of out of the other lot. Okay. So it all just has to balance, right? So if you're shipping 3 on the items tab here, then you also have to ship a total of 3. So there's nothing that would prevent you from saying, well, I want to ship 1 from this lot and 2 from that lot. As long as your total down here and your total up here match, you're fine. So that's what we'll do. Okay, confirm shipment. Now there's a system setting that controls whether or not this is checked by default. This system, it is set to confirm shipments by default. Confirm shipment means I'm done, create an invoice. Okay, and so that's what we want to do in this case. But you don't have to. So you can absolutely say, well, I don't want to confirm the shipment yet. I'm not ready to invoice it. But let's just get a packing list printed and get it out there. But in our case, we actually do want to print, we actually do want to confirm the shipment. So we print the packing list. What'll happen now is when I do this, that's it. You cannot come back into this pick ticket and do anything with it because it's been invoiced, and you can't edit a shipped order, and you can't edit an invoice. All you can do is credit rebill it or something like that, or just credit it completely or do an RMA, whatever. But there's no concept of editing invoices here. So we're going to go ahead and save with confirm shipment and print packing list. All right. So there we go. There's our packing list, and you can see that all the changes we made to our lots down here are reflected through in the packing list. And you can see our invoice number right there. And that's it. This order is invoiced. There are different invoice batches, and you set those up on a customer by customer basis, and that determines how the invoice gets delivered. So each morning, or you could set it up to automate it, you will run an invoice report, and that will, if the customer, let's say, is in the batch for emailing, you're going to retrieve the invoices, click email, and it's going to email out every invoice that needs to be emailed out. Or you could print them all for customers where you have to print and mail or whatever. But that has to happen. Every invoice needs to be printed at least once, or really just once, and then transmitted to the customer at that point. However, if you want to look at the invoice, or if you need to reprint one because a customer says, hey, I didn't get it or whatever, that is all done in your AR drill down. So if I if I do AR drill, so I got several different ways that I can do inquiries into invoices in AR. We know the invoice number in this case, so we'll just use that, but you could do it by customer ID. You could do whatever you want. So here's our invoice. It's exactly what we expected it to be, right? And if I wanted to reprint or print that invoice, I can do that from here. Now, I will tell you this. You do not want to go straight from the shipping window and come in here and print the invoice, because at that point, you're marking the invoice as printed, and it will not get into the invoice batch. So your best bet is just leave it alone, run your invoice batch the next morning, and only print from here if either A, you are immediately sending it to the customer from here, or B, it's a reprint and you just need to see what was on it. But for the most part, everything is on screen anyway. But we'll go ahead and print this one just so you can see how it works. And there's your invoice document, which looks a lot like the packing list. It's not, but they do look very similar. Okay, so we got that. Now we need to pay the invoice, right? So these invoices all went out to your customer, and at some point, hopefully, you're going to get paid. And all of those options are in your cash receipts screens. Okay, and there's a same thing. There's different options for how to do cash receipts. By and large, people do it by customer ID, but you can do it by ship to. You can do it by corporate ID. Just kind of depends on whatever works for you. But we'll do cash receipts by customer ID. All right, so here we go. You can start with an invoice number. If it's a single invoice, typically what ends up happening is you're pulling up everything for a customer because you're being paid usually across multiple invoices by a customer. So they're writing you one check that covers all the different invoices. I'm going to have to do some math on the fly here. You select which bank this is being deposited to. It's automatically going to generate a deposit number for you. And it's based on the date and which iteration of deposit you're doing. And let's just say this was received as a check, and the check number is 1234556. And then we're going to put in an amount so that if we're going to pay this in full, it should be, I think, $25.90. Okay, and from this point, the easiest thing to do is just to say, hey, I want to apply this payment. And it's going to go oldest to newest and just start posting it up. And if it doesn't balance, when it gets to the last invoice it can pay, it'll do a partial. Or if they have told you, hey, these are the invoices I'm paying, you can individually go through there and either type in the amount received or just check paid in full if they're paying the whole thing. So let's see, I can kind of demonstrate that out. If I uncheck it, so I have $25.90 to apply. I can say, okay, that one's paid in full. Oh, now I only have $20.25 left. No problem. So we'll pay this one in full. And then once this hits zero, you've balanced out. So that's it. Once you've done that, click save. And now you have an invoice that's paid. If you want to get an idea of how all these transactions have flowed over time, probably one of the easiest ways to get a handle on it is Customer Master Inquiry, which you can either search for in the toolbar, but there's also a hotkey of F8 to bring it up. And there's a lot of different stuff down here at the bottom that you can use to kind of see their history, whether it's order-based history or invoices or whatever. So if we go here to invoices, you can see there's nothing comes up because by default we're only looking at open invoices. But what we can do is click show all invoices, and there's our two invoices, and you can see what payments were applied. You can even drill into them and look at those payments. Oh, here was my payment number, here is my check number, here is what date I received it, so on and so forth. And that's pretty much it for quote to cash. I mean, there's different ways through it depending on whether you're importing orders or if you're applying based on ship to IDs or, you know, using automatic shipping. I mean, there's a range of different ways to get to the same result. But at the end of the day, if you just wanted to walk through it manually from the beginning to the end, then this is how you would do it. We'll do one more quick example, at least taking it through the order process so that you can see the quote to order wizard. But other than that, it's just repetitive from there on out, whether you ship through Wireless Warehouse or whether you ship through the shipping window. The end result is the same. You're creating an invoice. The invoice goes into the invoice batch, which I suppose I could show you that as well. So if I go to invoice report, so it says print invoices. That's the screen where you run your invoice batch, and you can run that on a range of criteria. Typically, if you guys are doing invoicing on a location by location basis, then normally what's going to happen is you're just going to restrict it down to a single branch. We can run this one wide open. It's no problem. And then what shipping date are you doing it for? Now here's the rub. I always recommend either leave this at January 1st, 1990, or at least back it up 4 or 5 days, because what happens is if somebody comes in, you run your invoice batch or whatever, and somebody comes in and let's say you run it at the end of the day, and then somebody comes in that night and invoices another order, that's going to get missed. That invoice will never make it to the customer if you say the next day, oh, well, now I only want to print invoices from today. So anything that happens after you run this report and before you run the next one, if you don't set these dates correctly, those could get missed. So I just recommend leaving it. You always want to make sure every invoice has been printed at least once. So typically I just leave that as default and don't mess with it, but there are instances where you may want to do that. There's a lot of different things here that you can do. You can do reprints if you need to. If a customer says, hey, I need all my invoices for the last week, you can do that. But otherwise, you're just going to go in here and say print, and it's going to go find every invoice. Now, I don't have email enabled on this system. If I did, there would be an option to email, and it would pre-populate all the billing email addresses and all of that. But you can see here it kicked out 11 different invoices that had never been printed before. And you know, these, like, some of these go back to 2018, which is exactly why I suggest always running it as far back as possible so that nothing ever gets missed. But yeah, that's about all there is to that. Pretty simple stuff. If you need to do reprints, then you would just check the reprint option. And then you could put in criteria to say, hey, I need to see all of a certain customer, and this is a good case where you might want to do a date. So let's just say everything for January 2024. And then you hit retrieve, and it will go back and find, oh, let's see. I'm probably doing something wrong here. Let's just leave it wide open. Why am I not getting anything? Oh, probably because the invoices are paid. So let's see. Include down payment. That one says open only. They should have been in there. I don't know why they're not coming up. I must have. Oh, that's why. There we go. 01/31/24. Let's do that. That should make some come up. Nope. This should be bringing something back. Let me put a 0 there. Retrieve. All right, let's just try clearing it out and starting over. Yes. Reprint. All right, there we go. Okay, so now it's working. And then from here, you can check to select which ones that you want to reprint. So if I just said, well, I just really want this one and maybe this one here, then when I hit print, I'm only going to get those two. And there we go. There's one, and there's the other one. Okay, let's do quote to order wizard just so you can see that. And then I think we're going to call this workflow done. So same thing, we're just going to start a quote. And we don't really even need to print it. We'll just save it. Okay, that's 168, so 1,168. We go retrieve the quote. And we can now do the quote to order wizard. And so basically, like I said, what it's going to do is when I go through this wizard, it's going to create a new order with a new order number and leave this quote alone. You can optionally say, hey, I want to recalculate pricing if you need to. You can flag the quote as complete from here if you need to. You can move notes if you need to. So a lot of different options there. We're just going to take the defaults. You can flag out certain line items as complete if need be. Freight codes, delivery instructions, all that good stuff is there. And there we go. There's my new order. See, it's not a quote and it's there. And I can go in and ship this one. Or print the pick ticket for it, rather. Another thing is that whenever you convert it, whether you do it with a right mouse button convert or with the QTO wizard, there's going to be a source ID up here, and it's going to tell you this is the quote that it came from. So that's a handy way to get back to it. So you can see in this one, it came from 168. So if the quote number and the order number are the same, you know it was right-click converted, and you can't go back and just look at the quote. But in this case, since they're different, you should be able to, unless somebody went in and did a right mouse button. But see, this one's still, there's your quote. It's still completely there. So that's really about it for how to do a quote to cash process. I hope you find it helpful. If you're evaluating P21 or you're just trying to kind of get your feet under you and figure out, well, like generally, how does this work? Hopefully this is a good way for you to be able to figure that out. So thanks a lot. If you have any questions, put them in the comments and we'll try to get them answered for you.